Hi, I'm Tim, he's Brian, and welcome to Watchbox. You are watching from the vault. Today the theme is dive watches. Brian, how are you doing?
Doing good. Glad to be back. This is, back-to-back weeks, so I'm really excited.
Yeah, we're getting back to our routine. We are on every single Thursday. And on that note, we are wrist checking. What are you wearing today, Brian?
So today I am wearing a 5065. I'll have you hold it so you can show it to the camera. This is a watch that I've gotten a tremendous amount of wear of since I've purchased it. I love the fit and feel and the size on my wrist. It's ultra thin. So this is a 5065. It is the predecessor to the current version of the Aquanaut, 38 millimeters. You can see that it has that textured dial. One of the features that really drew me to the watch was the highly luminescent nature of the hands and the indices, which again, I'm a fan of highly luminescent watches. But also the fact that the straps on these watches are the same size as the current ladies Luce model, which gives you a lot of different optionality in terms of the color. So right now I have it on gray, but I have blue, khaki green, and again, overall extremely wearable. 38 millimeters really fits my wrist really well. And I'm a big fan of the watch.
And in case you're wondering, that's a Luce strap if you want to duplicate this arrangement at home. You guys know me, Zin EZM11. I'm very predictable, so we're not going to spend much time on that. It's a central register.
When are we going to be ready for another watch?
Soon enough. I think I'll probably fall in love with a watch on the show, and then I'll just take it out of circulation one day. You guys will be watching. It'll happen right before your eyes. But before it does, I want to remind you, we are buying watches, individual watches and entire collections. Reach out to Mosso at thewatchbox.com. The address to buy, trade, or sell a watch, and we are paying the highest prices since Watchbox was founded back in 2017. Brian, today's theme is dive watches. Show me your first choice.
Okay, so we'll start with the Linde Werdelin. So Danish in design, modular case, which allows you to actually connect the case of this watch to their dive computer. What drew me to the watch was I've always been a fan of their styling. It's a teeny bit big for my wrist, so if it was a little bit smaller, it would fit me a little bit better. But again, it's very ergonomic. It fits the wrist nicely if you had a slightly larger wrist than mine. DLC coated case, again, highly luminescent indices, rotating bezel. So just overall, I think a really well executed watch and off the beaten path, which for me, is pretty cool. I always thought that there was a tremendous amount of value for these watches, and they've been making them for a long time. So it's one of those independents that's been around for quite a while. And if you follow watches online and you follow different blogs and things like that, you've definitely seen Linde Werdelin before, so you would know, you know the case and it's recognizable from a distance.
Now this model, which is the hard black, is an interesting piece because you can see it's both a dive watch and very thin. And that is an endangered species in the dive watch genre. Thin dive watches just don't come along. So the watch is cool on that basis alone. It's also an 88-piece limited edition. It also works with their land sports computer. Their Sea Sports dive computer is called the Reef, and it's a real professional dive-style computer, so you can use the watch as your backup and the computer as your primary. But it also works with the Rock, which is designed specifically for hikers and skiers. So this is a full-service sports watch. As you can see, the timepiece, 300 meters water resistant, is also individually numbered out of 88. So the hard black series, always limited in production. And Linde Werdelin actually shocked me because a few years ago, Jorn Werdelin came on my show back in the Watch You Want era. He was the only brand chieftain who was brave enough to do that when we were way aftermarket. And I have to say, he was a cool guy, a fun guy, and I was surprised that production of these watches is really only a few hundred a year for all models, so they're not common by any means.
Yeah, no, and again, I remember when he came in to do the video, extremely nice guy. And again, I think it's a brand that's always produced a small quantity, has been around for a long time, they're recognizable, and I've always liked the styling and design.
By the way, keep us streaming, open a different window, Google Linde Werdelin Comics. You'll see what I mean.
I think this is like one of the few brands I'm actually, pronouncing it correctly, which is nice.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
All right. Now, we've got, surprisingly, I chose 3 titanium dive watches. I didn't intend it that way. This is a model that came out in 2017, and for me, this was the 50 Fathoms Perfected. It is the 5015, 45 millimeters, but unlike the standard polished steel model, this blue dial beauty is in satin titanium. So what I love about this watch is that it fits well, it feels great, it looks even better, it has a degree of subtlety that the glam rock standard model does not, and because the lugs are so narrowly spaced, less than 51 millimeters from lug to lug, even my baby wrist can wear this watch at 45. So don't give up if you've got that smaller wrist. This watch is both light and ergonomically sized properly. There's a lot to love here. First, let's do a bezel sound off, because all of these watches have diving bezels, and we're going to hear all of them except one from Brian that has a bezel inside the case. 120 click, sharp, very distinct with a nice sharp grippy knurling on the edge. This is still the signature 5015 with the sapphire crystal over the bezel. So at night, this watch is easily the Lume Shot winner if we're counting Luminova. One of these watches is self-powering. Turn it over, automatic winding, 5-day power reserve, now with a silicone hairspring, so anti-magnetic. You don't need the iron cage of the standard 5015, which means you can open up the display case back and see that hand-finished 3 mainspring barrel movement. This is a very, very tough caliber based on the Ultra Haute de Gamme 13RO from the Le Brassus model line, so it has impressive pedigree. It's almost indestructible, and these are known to run to about 1 second a day on the wrist in use. All of this 300 meters water resistant, it is still a full service diver. This happens to be my favorite watch in the price class. If you're going to buy these pre-owned, you're talking around $11,000, and it's a screaming deal when you consider that it's probably better built and better finished than a Royal Oak offshore diver for thousands less.
Yeah, I mean, it was my favorite watch on the table, and you just happened to have picked it before I had a chance. So.
I beat you to the punch. I got to the safe first.
You did, and it's funny enough because I actually picked all black watches here, which was pretty.
All tie, all black cases, but very different black cases. You got one PVD, but now let's take a look at different materials.
Okay, so let's start with the Hublot. So here we have the Oceanographic 48. So 48 millimeters, as the name suggests. 3 materials in the case here. You have carbon, you have ceramic, and you have a little bit of titanium. The watch itself is water resistant to 4,000 feet. Again, the tool watches of tool watches, right? It does exactly what it says that it's going to do. Quite a large watch, very thick. Again, if you have a smaller wrist like myself, it's not the easiest piece to wear. But if you're looking to come out with a bang, this is definitely that sort of watch.
I'm making the comparison to the size of my fist just so you guys have something to give scale. This is an enormous watch. But I will say, Brian was correct when he judged that this is one of the few Hublot watches that actually walks the walk. They all talk the talk, but this watch is an ISO 6425 diver. The 6425 means the watch has to be tested to 125% of its rated depth. So this is a 4,000 meter watch, so this watch is tested to 5,000 meters.
Oh, what did I say, 4,000 feet?
Well, it's even better. Hublot, for once, under-promising and over-delivering. But this is a watch that also includes the helium escape valve. If you need that feature as a saturation diver, it's there. I mentioned the internal rotating bezel. The watch features a grenade pin-like cover and a screw-down crown for the internal rotating bezel. Now, this is a great feature because it absolutely guards against intended mobility of the bezel. This is also a watch that frankly is a little bit unusual in that it's part of the all black series, so while the bezel is moving internally, you can't quite see it. It's a 500 piece limited edition that combines a bunch of different materials from resin to carbon fiber to titanium to sapphire, and all of that in a case that's nominally 48 millimeters and is probably the poster child for a watch that wears larger than its rated size. So it's a 48, but if I had to put an estimate on the size of this watch, eyes closed, without a ruler or a caliper, I'd say this is more like a 52. This thing is huge. But because it is made of lightweight materials, if you wanted to wear it on my wrist, it would be comfortable enough that you could enjoy it all day long. And I think that's what Hublot is. At the end of the day, they are disarmingly honest about just wanting to have fun. Keep going.
No, go ahead.
No, I just want to say there is one more cool feature here in that there is a push-button quick release.
That's what I was going to say.
Oh, okay. I stole your thunder there. There's a push-button quick release that allows you to swap out the strap. And because the watch was developed in part to benefit the Monaco Museum of the Sea, you have the image or the logo of the Musée Oceanographique, the namesake of the watch, on the reverse side.
And one of the nice features, as we said, in having the option to quick change the straps is that you can add a pop of color to the watch. And Hublot makes a lot of different strap options. They have rubber, they have their gummy straps, which to me is the best in the business in terms of combining both. So again, and they do produce them in lots of different colors. So if you are looking to add a yellow or an orange or red or white or whatever it may be, it's easy to change yourself, which is nice.
Okay, so now we're going to go from Hublot to a watch that probably represents the entry level. I mean, I think the Linde Werdelin probably undercuts it a little bit, but in general, when you're talking about Grand Seiko dive watches, you're talking about watches that are going to be purchased for far under $10,000 that offer a lot of value for the money, and that's exactly what you get with the SPGA 231. Now, you're familiar with the 229 and the 029, which are the steel versions of this watch. This one in grade 5 titanium is 44.2, which feels almost like a date just after that Hublot, but it is a remarkably handsome look with a banana-shaped case that wraps around the wrist, and you can see that it features the only other clasp besides the Rolex Deep Sea that I know of that can be adjusted when it's on the wrist with the clasp closed. So it is a remarkably versatile system that gives you adjustment, not just an all or nothing fold out. The clasp itself is probably over-engineered, as there's both a clamshell lock and a trigger deployment system. Now when you throw it on the wrist, because it is made of titanium, it feels a lot lighter than it would otherwise be in steel in this size. So it's a bit disarming in the way it wears. It's nice and flat because the case itself arcs around the wrist. It has a wonderful bezel action, and I'll hold it up to my mic in a moment, but it has that glide and that silky glide in combination with a still well-defined mechanical detent that you associate with Rolex. So it does feel like a much more expensive piece, and if you love that Grand Seiko Zaratsu hand finishing of the case where you hold it directly against the tin wheel, that polishing standard is executed on this watch. Now it's also a spring drive, which means this 200-meter diver has a 3-day power reserve, and though you can't quite see it under the minute hand, there's a power reserve indicator on the dial. The lume is spectacular. Let's hear the bezel. I see Sean over there turning up the levels on the mic. Thank you, Sean. Well done. It's just an awesome watch, a fun piece. A watch that you could, if you want, wear full-time, in the shower, in the office, a business suit, or a bathing suit. This is an all-the-time watch, and one of the few watches on the table today that I would really describe as an all-the-time watch.
And one of the first things that first drew me to Grand Seiko was, there were the dials, and then there was also the level of finishing. And the level of finishing on this watch is just spectacular. And in terms of the material, what I always enjoyed is, you have titanium that's dark titanium that you may find on an FP Jour and Octa Sport. And then you have titanium where, because of the level of finishing and the high polish and just even the coloring of the titanium itself, that it almost looks like stainless steel. So from a distance, if you were holding this up to, let's say, a brush finish Submariner or another watch, you may even have difficulty knowing that this was titanium in the first place. And I like that because, again, the watch, it's lending itself to a different look. It looks like you're wearing a more traditional steel sports dive watch, when in reality, when you put it on the wrist, it's tremendously lighter than that.
That's true. Some people don't want tie to be the gray metal on the wrist. They want it to look like steel, but wear like tie, and that's exactly what
similar
you get
to the
here.
Bethune.
That's true.
Similar in the sense that looks like more titanium.
Because we've got to end with that piece. We've got to end with that piece. Well, where do we go first?
Okay, so we'll finish with mine. So here we have an IWC Galapagos. Now, when this watch first came out, so not this iteration, but its predecessor, I would say it was like the first rubber-wrapped watch. Maybe not the first ever, but it was the first rubber-wrapped watch that really caught my attention. And the watch was just awesome. The feel of the case, the soft texture of the strap. I thought that they executed it really nicely. And again, the watch is always done exceptionally well. So here you have their Galapagos Aquatimer Chrono. It's what, 300 feet? Is it 300 feet? 300 feet.
300 meters.
300 meters. Inner rotating bezel. Again, that soft, buttery rubber strap. And again, just a really nicely executed watch from them. The only thing that throws me a little bit, I would say, is the stainless steel buckle. But again, not a killer for me because it does tie up to the stainless steel case back, which you'll show them in a minute. And but other than that, again, you know, IWC's had the Galapagos line for quite a while, different than the Darwin line, you know, but both within a similar family. Yeah.
You know, I actually like the polished and satin finished steel buckle because I find on a lot of black watches, they throw in a perfunctory PVD titanium or steel buckle, and that winds up getting scratched up. I like the fact that IWC cut to the chase and just gave you a bare metal buckle that's not going to obviously or easily disfigure. So on the wrist, it is a sizable watch. The real effective size of this case on the wrist is between 48 and 49 millimeters, but you can see it does not wear that way.
Fits you nicely.
It is a good watch for a small wrist, and big reason for that is the shape of the case. Don't just go by lug to lug or case diameter. Go by the shape of a case. And here you have lugs that jut down sharply. You have straps that curve, and as you can see, are very pliant and flexible. And although I don't have the nails to use the system, this generation of the Aquatimer has a quick release system underneath both sides of the strap. So it too, like the Hublot, has quick release lug systems if you wish to swap or just clean close to the case. Now what's interesting here is that at first glance, what appears to be a helium escape valve is actually a drain and a cover for the differential gearing that allows the IWC Safe Dive bezel to operate. So you can hear that, even though it's an internal bezel like the Hublot, you can actually feel and hear it as it operates. But it's unidirectional, and you don't actually have to take your fingers off the bezel to adjust the inner race as it rotates. Now there's a lot to love here because the movement, unlike most of the Aquatimers of this era, is an IWC manufactured piece. It is a flyback chronograph that you can reset and restore. It's vertical clutch, it's column wheel, it's free sprung, it's a 68-hour power reserve and automatic, and I believe it's the 89365 movement. So technically this is a very accomplished watch. Even as it's large, there's a lot to love internally if you are that watchmaking guy, that horological nerd who wants the watch to be as beautiful on the inside as it is on the outside. And it is a very, very comfortable watch because at the end of the day, the shape of the case is what makes this piece, and the strap is absolutely rapturous. You can see IWC did their homework with air pockets on the bottom, so on a hot day, the wrist will vent well with the strap. Everything about this watch is ideally suited for sporting occasions, active lifestyles, the great outdoors. Is it an everyday watch? I'm not sure that a watch this stark is an everyday watch, but I often also say that the man makes the watch and not the other way around.
It also looms awesome. I wish we had an opportunity to show off the loom, but you know, it happens to look really cool.
In the future, we'll get B-reel of the watches before the show. We'll get the loom. All right, so I'm going to let you introduce my third watch because I know you're dying to talk about it, and if I hadn't grabbed it first, you probably would.
No, go for it.
Sure?
So,
okay.
Yeah, so, well, I'll give it a little intro. So here we have Bethune's first dive watch. Again, it's in their DB28 case, rubber strap, and yeah, I'll let you take it from there.
All right, so this was released last year in prototype form, and I was lucky because for the first time in my life, I was able to wear the prototype of a watch for an extended period, about a week, before it went into production. So I talked a little bit to them about what I thought could change, what was good, what needed revision, so I was proud to be part of the process. Technically a 44 millimeter watch in grade 5 titanium, it doesn't wear that way because of the floating lugs that adjust from 51 millimeters to 54. They're spring loaded, and you can actually get different lug sizes. If you send the watch back for service, you can change the actual lug size to tailor it to your wrist. Otherwise, it's spring loaded and excellent. It's surprisingly thin. At 12.8 millimeters, you would not expect that. It's 105 meters water resistant. I guess they wanted to just go beyond the bare minimum of 100 for a diver. And it has a screw down bullhead type crown that you'll use to manually wind the two mainspring barrels, which you could see poke out from underneath the delta-shaped bridge. Now what I love here is that when you discharge the barrels to operate, and I'm going to do my best to create a little bit of a light cone here, to operate the LED lights that illuminate this watch and backlight the bezel. But when you do that, you can actually see the barrels running in reverse and discharging. And there's a little repeater style governor, a centrifugal governor, that slows down the release of power from the barrels. There's a power reserve indicator over at 9 o'clock for the 5-day power reserve. And then you've got triple parachute shock protection, which is what they call it, with 2 flanking shock protection springs and then Inca block on the balance staff. Patents, many. The LED system, the twin barrels, The balance, the hairspring, the shock protection, even the escape wheel, all patented and proprietary. You could buy an entire collection of Richard Mille watches and not get this many patents. And because the watch is a diver, it does have a rotating and ratcheting bezel. And we're gonna give you a listen to that.
How do you feel about the deployment? Do you think it should have been on a tang?
I think for $100,000, it should have been on a deployant. I think they made the right call.
I love when you ask me to talk about it. Like somebody other than you talking about this watch is like somebody other than Johnny Mac talking about a tennis match.
It's like asking someone to speak about your baby. That's kind of how I regard this watch. And Brian did a great intro for me.
Oh yeah, this is the brand. This is the case. Tim, you take it from here.
You can see it wears well. It doesn't wear anything like a 44. It's feather light. It's all tie. You can actually see the underlying mechanism that drives the power reserve. You can see it through the case back. This is technically the DB28 GS Grand Bleu. It is de Bethune's first dive watch, and if you're a fan of James Thompson and Black Badger, a small amount of his AGT Ultra material was used in the three hands of the watch, so it does have luminova, a small amount. It also has traditional hand finishing, so if you want anglage, black polished screws, combination of coat and engine turning, you will find it all here. It's present, correct, it's traditionally executed, but the look is Star Trek. Or, I guess, since this is a dive watch, Sequest.
No, I mean, again, the fact of the matter is that it's, for what you're getting in the watch, it's absolutely awesome. And, when we compare it to, when we compare it to RM, because again, this is a very avant-garde case design. It's modern. They're pushing the boundaries of the design of the case. It's a watch that if it had said Richard Mille on the dial, they'd be charging $1 million for it.
Oh yeah.
And so I do think that when we talk about brands like a de Bethune that have been around for a long time, are very recognizable from a distance, have a watchmaker behind the brand that is regarded as one of the best that's living, I really do believe that more collectors should get into the piece. And again, I can understand that they may be a little bit off-putting by the case or thinking about when they're going to wear it. But I think that no different than anything else, like once you have it on the wrist and once you sort of feel it and see, it's one of those watches that you really need to get it into your hands to understand just how special it is versus seeing it like in a magazine or online.
Yeah, I mean, RMs look ridiculous. People wear those. This is like an RM that went to college and then grad school and then got its PhD. This watch is awesome, and remember, RM's gonna make 5,500 watches in an average year. De Bethune's gonna make about 150 and maybe 12 of these. So there's your exclusivity argument. Brian, I'm going to let you have the last word on dive watches. This is the season for them. How can people learn more from Watchbox?
So you can log into our website, take a look at what we have. B, go to our watch channel, Watchbox Studios on YouTube. Take a look at the videos that we post. Again, I'm sitting next to a magician here, so anything that you would ever want to know about dive watches, it's there. And again, we really appreciate you guys logging on. Let me fix my mask. We're going to be doing these thematic shows moving forward. So, again, if you have any ideas about shows that you would want to do, please let myself know, let Tim know. We're doing this for you guys. Somebody mentioned in one of the comments that we should do a show with irregular case shapes. I really like that idea. When I mentioned it to Tim, he sort of just stared at me, which means I don't know if that's going to be
I had my heart set on the dive watch thing. It was like 24 hours ago.
He just stared at me. I'm like, okay, we're just going to stick with your idea. But, again, please let us know. We're really excited to be back in the studio together. And we hope you guys enjoy. So again, I'm Brian.
I'm Tim.
Thank you guys for logging on.